If you feel like you're way too busy for the kind of money you're making, the chances are is that you've fallen into a classic business owner trap. You've trapped yourself. You're occupied in the day-to-day while the business is still stuck. It's not giving you freedom. Smart business owners do not work 100 hours a week or 80 hours a week. They focus on building leverage. Now, I learned this the hard way. I also used to work, 6 days a week, trying hard not to work 7. But where I really learned these lessons was on the mat. As you might know, I practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when I first started, I was fit and I was strong and I could power through most matches when I first joined the gym that I train at. But if I trained with anyone who had been training for a while, any of the upper belts, they could kind of just have their way with me. They could toss me around and I felt like I was weightless. And it was an embarrassing, tough scenario. There was no doubt that I was working harder than they were. I was sweating harder, I was breathing harder, I was putting all of the effort in, but I wasn't getting the same results that they were. And that's the same mistake that I see business owners make all the time. They don't have an effort problem, they have a leverage problem. Today, I want to walk you through how to move above your business, not in the business. And these steps will help you move out of constant busyness and into a business that delivers the results and the freedom that you really are looking for. So if this has been helpful to you so far, hit like, please subscribe, turn on notifications. This channel is about building businesses that don't require you to grind nonstop. I've also built a ton of free resources on my website, christianmontine.com. And in those, particularly on the blog and in the resource page, you'll find lots and lots of tools that you can use that will help you get out of the day-to-day without losing control of your business. The link to my website's in the description. So the main point in this is you have to begin to accept that effort can only get you so far. If you're super smart, you're a super hard worker, effort will take you a certain distance in terms of building your business. And so the whole rise and grind mentality does have some value. That's why it's so believable to people. And just for context, most of my clients are either in construction or construction adjacent industries, or a lot of them are medical or health related type industries. Both of those industries have cultures of just grind, put in tons and tons of hours. And I can tell you for a fact that when I work with clients in those industries, we are able to produce massive growth, dramatic growth, when the leaders realize it's not all on effort and strength or the time that they put into things, but they begin to leverage what's around them and resources around them. That's when they're able to grow. So it's similar to that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu analogy. I remember when I first started, I was a white belt, 200 pounds, I was really strong, and I'm being matched up with like a 145, 150 pound guy who was definitely more experienced. He was an upper belt, but he's a little guy in my mind. Like I should be able to pick him up and throw him across the room. And he would just toss me around. I couldn't do anything. It was the weirdest experience to go grapple with him and to feel so completely out of control. To be honest, part of me loved it because it's like, oh, this is the magic of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just this sense of like, this stuff really works. And it was completely mystifying to me because I couldn't understand how someone who was so much smaller than me could have so much control over me and just really completely dominate me in matches. And over the years, I started to learn what he was doing and what I was doing. And he was actually using my strength, my weight, my effort, my drive all against me. And I didn't even know that. Even though I knew conceptually that was part of what the sport was about, I didn't really understand what he was doing. And it takes time to understand that. But I want to explain how that applies to business, because if you want to successfully scale your business or grow, or you just want freedom in your business, you have to begin to let go of this idea of it's just through effort, pure, raw, brute force effort that I'll grow this. And when you start to look at, you've all heard this saying, work smarter, not harder. When you finally make that a mission, how do we work smarter? What's the smarter way to do this? What's the lowest effort way to get the highest amount of outcome? Once you start to think through that perspective, you will begin to really find freedom in your business as well as a platform for scalability. And they go together. That's the good news in this, is if you want growth, if you want freedom, the same kinds of approaches are necessary for that. Incidentally, if you're ever thinking about selling your business or you want to grow the value of your business, these same concepts apply to that as well. Anybody anybody who's a buyer of a business or an investor in a businesses, if they sit down with an owner who's bragging about their 80-hour, 100-hour work weeks, they're, in most cases, there's always exceptions that prove me wrong, but in most cases, they're going to say it's to be a huge red flag. Like, oh, this business doesn't operate without you and your effort. I know I'm not buying a business to make my life harder, so they'll pass on your business until if they meet an owner who says, yeah, I come in 20 hours a week or I work 10 hours a month on this and we're still building this business and it's still growing. I've got an amazing team. They'll be like, great, I want to invest in that. Where do I sign up? So these are important concepts. Trust me. So part of what you need to do is you need to redefine what your job is. So when you're starting a business or you're initially growing a business, the leaders of the business tend to do everything. You know, there's chef, cook, and bottle washer. You're doing everything yourself, and it's just too much. And so what you want to begin to do is move out of that stage as fast as you can. And I want to explain, that's what this video is going to be about. I want to explain how to do that, how to grow systems and teams that produce leverage for you so that you don't have to do all of it yourself. You can direct the direction of where things are going and focus on the quality of what's being produced. You're not focused on actually doing it. And that's the shift that you want to be able to make. Because if you're the only person or you're the primary person that's creating value in your company, then you have put a cap on whatever you personally can do. If you're okay with that and you like having what would be called a lifestyle business, it's a type of business, that's fine. But if you're wanting to get beyond where you're at right now and you want freedom to spend time with your kids, you want freedom to just enjoy other things besides working all the time, if you want any of that, or you just want lower stress, your doctor's saying, hey man, you know, your blood pressure is not great. It's got something to do with how you're working. If you want to adjust any of those things, then this is part of the path to that. So here's the basic structure of any and every healthy business is you'll have a leader. Let's say this is you. We'll say it's you. And then there's going to be three main buckets of responsibilities. Sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's 5, but there's basically 3 main buckets of responsibilities. One is in finance and administration. The next bucket is in operations. I'll just call it ops. So this has everything to do with producing and delivering your products or services, whatever you do. If you're an engineering firm, this has everything to do with, you know, doing your designs and getting them, working with the clients, getting them out the door, getting things built. If you're a manufacturing firm, it's the whole, you know, assembly line process or production line process, whatever you're doing. It's that whole process of actually producing and delivering your products and services. And then over here, I'm just going to call it sales. We're really talking about sales and marketing and business development, all of those things that bring business in the door. That's over here. I'm just using sales for a shorthand. I know there's some pedantic people out there that are going to go nuts over that and say sales is not, I don't care. So bringing money in the door, producing and delivering the stuff that you sell, and then all the back end that cares for it, that takes care of it. As you get a little bit larger, you might separate out finance and administration, but for most companies, I would say up to 10 or $20 million in revenue, or maybe even a little bit more, it's usually a combined kind of a role. And so you can begin to separate into these functions sub $1 million in revenue. So you don't have to be a large company. You can be a tiny micro company and still begin to separate out these kinds of functions. And I encourage you to do that. I want to talk through how to do that first. Usually what you want to do is at the beginning, you and your partners, you're doing everything. You're doing the whole deal. Maybe you got a couple of helpers in one of these spaces or assistants, and that's going to keep you stuck if you operate that way. So typically what you want to do is you're probably going to retain some involvement in these two longer. This is usually the number one area that you want to let go. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that most business owners, let's say you're an engineer, or you're a doctor, or you run a construction company, usually your strengths are not in making sure insurance forms are filled out properly or managing people's, reviewing applications and things like that. That's not usually your happy spot. It's not usually your strength. Usually you're going to be really good at one or both of either bringing the money in the door and being a rainmaker, or you're going to be really good at delivering the products or services. Like usually most owners are really good in this space. So typically you want to give away this role first. What I typically recommend is that if you're very small, you find a good office manager, a good bookkeeper, and you find somebody that can fill that slot. If you're under, I would say usually around even up to $50 million a year in revenue, many of this function can be outsourced fractionally. You may want to have, as you get larger, as you get around to 5 million or so, you might want to have it, or maybe even smaller, you might want to have an in-house bookkeeper. You're going to probably want to have your accounts payable, your accounts receivable. Some of those things will be in-house. But what you want to try to do is often have the highest level. You want to have a very good, a very sharp person doing that. And often their availability and cost is higher than what makes sense for your company. As you grow, you're going to outgrow just having a bookkeeper. And now you're going to want a controller. Controller is someone who helps manage your budgets and helps make some of those financial decisions in your stead. And then as you grow further, you're going to want, or even at that level, you're going to start to want fractional CFO, people who can make strategic decisions regarding your assets and your resources and help you think more laterally and not just making sure that that your budget is being kept, or that the numbers are on both sides of the ledger are the same. And so as you need that extra advice, I usually recommend that you go fractional for that. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail around it. There's a place where you want some of this in-house. If you say, most owners and executives' fears are, if we start to include other people with our money, then we will lose our money. And that is a justified fear. Embezzlement is a common risk. But I see more problems due to still not understanding how to manage your money and thinking you've outsmarted the system in some way and still getting embezzled. Super common. And so bringing in somebody who actually understands how to set up what are called financial controls and can set up a good financial management system is a better approach than you trying to figure it out yourself, especially if this is not your area of expertise. Bring in a professional with it. There's plenty of resources online. I've written about it elsewhere. About how to do this and how to think about it. This needs to be your first hires. Bringing in a professional who can run the back end of your company, the financial side and the administration. There may be a team, but you're going to want to have one person who oversees all of this. I've belabored that point enough, but it's usually a sensitive point for a lot of folks. The second person that you need to hire, and this doesn't have to be at the same time, but it should be shortly afterwards, is whichever one of these is not your strength. So if you're a rainmaker and you can make money all day and all night long, but you're not the best at, or you don't love the most actually providing or delivering the product or service, then this needs to be your number two. If it's the other way around, if you're the best at making sure things get done, but you're not the best at, don't love, doing sales or business development, then that needs to be your number two. Whichever one is your second best area, you give that one off first. And you bring in somebody who's an A player. They can be relied on. They can be trusted on. They can manage complexity. So if, let's say you're doing a $10 million, let's say you're doing $10 million in revenue right now, the thought experiment you have is if we were to double to 20 or $30 million, would this person be able to build that team and run the activities that would be under a 20 or $30 million company? If they can, hire them for that role. If you're like, no, they're kind of just, they're maxing out at 10 million, but man, they're a nice person, I really like them, they're the wrong person for that role. You got to hear that. Doesn't matter how long they've worked with you and how much you think they're an amazing person and you just love hanging out with them at barbecues. If they can't carry growth, they're not going to produce growth for you. That's just the way it is. And so you want to find the person who can do that. You might need to bring them in from outside and they will help you get there. These people, when they come onto your team, it should not be, I'm talking about the people who run that you're putting in charge of these areas of responsibility. When they come in, it should provide immediate lift. You should know right away, this person understands this job as well as or better than I do. There should be that sense right away, like, oh my goodness, I didn't know it could operate that well. If you're bringing in someone and you're saying, hey, it's going to take about 18 months and I'll be able to train them up into that role, probably not the right person to run ops. Might be a good person to support that individual, to be on the team, not the person to run it or any of the other departments. I hope you're getting that point. After you've handed off finance and admin, then you've handed off whichever is your number two, then afterwards you hand off your number three. Now you still might be involved. So let's say you're an amazing rainmaker and you can go out and make big deals deals all the time, and it's easy for you to do that. I would still start moving towards bringing somebody in who's in charge of making this happen, and then you move to the place of, if you've been bringing in $1 million deals and you can do that all day, all night long, then you start moving to bringing in $5 or $10 million deals. You start moving towards those strategic growth places where you can really make your magic work, and you let this person manage the smaller stuff and kind of the bread and butter activities. But you hand those things over, and what you do is you make them aligned towards the overall vision that this whole team is trying to get to, and you start to become an architect of culture in this space. So I want to talk briefly, how do you begin to define what do they do and what are they responsible for, and how do you separate it out from yourself? There's a very easy exercise that I give you if you were talking to me to do this. So I would have you list out all of the things you've got to do. Make a big list on a piece of paper. The millions of things you got rolling around in your brain. Then look at your calendar. What were all the things you had to do the last week, the last 2 weeks, the last month that you forgot about? Oh yeah, I got a bunch more of those. What about all the things coming up this month? End of year stuff. We're in February now, tax season type stuff. Whatever season you're in, because sometimes you forget about, oh yeah, you got to do this in that season or whatever. Make a giant list of all the things you got to do. Chances are highest that a whole bunch of them fit in, oh, this is all sales or business development or marketing, whatever you want to call it. Then, oh, this is all ops over here. And this part right here is a lot of finance and admin. Then there's a few things, so I'll make them square, that are left over. These might still be yours for now. Maybe you've got some R&D in there. Maybe there's some other kinds of things that I didn't think about. But probably what's going to happen is the majority of the things that you're doing fit under these buckets. Then you take the sales and you make that part of their job description. These are the things that I need you to get done. You define the standards that they need to get them done by. You define any expectations you have regarding dates and so on, and you give it to them. You give over, that's finance and admin, you give that to this person, and you give that to that person. That's how you do it. It's not that hard. It really is not. The hardest part of the entire process is two things. One is this person, you, learning to trust. And trust is a function of, and I have another video on that actually, but trust is a function of structure. It's not a function of just feeling it. When you don't have trust, you need to have transparency. And you have transparency in place when you know what the salesperson or the ops person, your ops manager, ops director, whatever you want to call them, you know what they're supposed to be doing, and you know what metrics you're going to look at, the dashboard that you're going to look at that will tell you that they're on track for what they're supposed to be doing. When you have that kind of transparency, you have built the mechanisms for trust. The other thing that makes it hard is that it takes a little bit, tiny little, as my daughter would say, tiny little baby effort. It doesn't take that much effort, but it feels like it does because nobody really wants to sit down and do this kind of work, or very few people do. And so what I find is this is an exercise that I walk through with my clients, and it takes minutes with an M. There's no other way to say it, but it doesn't take that long to start figuring these things out. And people will stall on it for over a year if I don't push them, because this isn't fun work. So it's always like falls off of their list of to-dos. Do it, get yourself unstuck, start working through this process. This isn't, incidentally, this isn't gonna happen like next week. You're not gonna hire all three of these people and get them up and running. You're gonna bring this person in, you're gonna get them established. It's gonna take 6 months, 9 months. Then you're gonna bring this person in. That's gonna take another few months or so. Then you're gonna bring this person in. The whole process, if you're really going for it, could take you a year, year and a half, 2, 3 years. It doesn't have to happen immediately, but it doesn't take forever. And understanding it and making any one of these shifts doesn't take that long. Hopefully that helps. So here's the paradox. The better your structure, the less effort that you need. A well-run $100 million company should be easier to run than a $10 million company, which is easier to run than a $1 million company. So if you find that growth has been making your life harder, you're probably still trying to win just by using brute force and strength as opposed to leverage. So I made a video for founders or owners explaining why moving into a CEO role or moving above your business often breaks them, and the leadership shifts that you need to make so that it doesn't break you. You can find a link to that right below.